Hello, and welcome to another book channel. I am your host, Matt, and I am so glad that you decided to click on this video. Appreciate you being here. And I am editor Matt, and we are off to a really great start because I couldn't even remember the name of the channel that I had settled on. So welcome not to another book channel, but to Bound in Prose. And I know you're already looking and seeing what I've got. This is nowhere near the backdrop that some booktubers have, but for me it's because I have my books spread out everywhere, like so. So we have the Stephen King bookshelf, the Wheel of Time shelf, the paperbacks under the TV shelf, and the spare bedroom shelf, which houses all the books that didn't quite make it to the main shelf. So yeah, that's why you're not getting like the most mesmerizing like book backdrop. So anyways, I have read most of these other shelves. I have read most of what I have, but I am really good or bad, however you look at it, about I go by a bookstore and I have to go inside and I cannot leave without a new book or two. So yeah, I have read most of these, but maybe some of them we'll get around to chit-chatting about as I actually do read them. I'm going to start off by talking about one of my recent favorite books, and that is The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. So I found this book rather serendipitously one day. I was kind of browsing around in Walmart, and there was one copy of this sitting on the shelf, and I thought, well, that looks really interesting, and this is going to sound very pompous of me, but I tend to gravitate towards chonkers of books. So I read it. I read the inside cover of it and kind of thought, yeah, that's pretty interesting, but I don't know that I want to spend the money on it today. So I decided to go to my local library, picked it up from there, read it, and then immediately had to go out and buy my own copy, as well as Dr. Verghese's first book, Cutting for Stone, which I have not read yet. But anyway, so that's how I kind of came across this book, and I am so grateful that I did because it is one of my favorites of the past few years. So before I get into anything having to do with synopsis or analysis, I don't know how much of that you're going to get today, but before I get into any of that, I will let you know that I'm going to try to keep this rather spoiler-free. I will have to talk about some things that happen in general terms, but I will try not to spell out too much for you because you should really just go pick this book up and read it. You lying sack of crap. There's some spoilers here, folks. Nothing too major, but just be forewarned that I do go into a little bit of detail. Sorry. So this is a multi-generational story about a family kind of living in southern India. It starts off with a young girl who is married to an older gentleman and has to go away with him, and her character kind of becomes the matriarch of this family throughout the story. So immediately I was already intrigued because I love those multi-generational type stories. I kind of put this on the same level as like The Thornbirds, East of Eden, which are two of my favorite books. So I was already like, yeah, this is probably going to be up my alley. So this main character, who becomes known as Big Amachi, I'm not sure the pronunciation, but kind of becomes the matriarch of this family, and it is brought to light that there is a curse in this family that somebody in each generation ends up drowning. And so this character of Big Amachi prays that her family will be sent somebody who can discover the cause for this and kind of cure this family of this affliction. So early on, there is a tragedy that occurs that kind of brings this curse to light, and kind of lets you know the sort of difficulties, trials, tribulations that our characters are going to have to endure throughout the novel. And yeah, there can be some pretty dark, difficult, disturbing even sections of this book, but it is incredibly well written, and one of the things that I really love is the ability of our characters to maintain positivity and faith as they struggle with such difficulties. So we have our main character, Big Amachi, her husband, and his son from a previous marriage, Jojo. And that's where the book starts off. But as the generations go, they have more children, more people come in to marry the children, friends that come to live with the family, previous relatives that show back up. There's a lot of characters kind of weaving in and out of their home throughout the novel. And then there's a second story kind of to the side with a young physician named Digby. And he has come to India to kind of get his medical practice going and to get more experience as he is sort of this burgeoning physician or surgeon. Big Amachi's husband, I really appreciated this character. Obviously, there are some cultural things, historical, traditional, about Big Amachi when she's a younger woman being married off to this much older man, which could easily have gone even further into like disgusting, icky sort of territory. But I felt like it was handled very well. The husband is very respectful of Big Amachi, takes her to church, tries to build a life for her that is very comfortable, respectful. So I was grateful that the tragedy doesn't come from their relationship. I thought it was handled well. You can still like the husband, and their relationship is beautiful in the end. So Big Amachi has a son named Philippos, and he is there throughout a majority of the novel. He has his own issues, one of those being an opium addiction, and the way that affects the people around him is tough to read. But one of the good things that I love about this book is that even though there's a lot of those difficulties, addictions, tragedies, there is a lot of redemption. So this is not a Hanya Yanagihara-esque situation. So you can go into this knowing that the payoff is worth it. So the storylines of this family and Digby do meet up towards the end, and no spoilers here, but all I will say is that I would say that this novel exemplifies the idea of tragic beauty. There was a point towards the end when one of the final revelations is occurring where I had to close the book and take a second, and I was angry and devastated, but it's so beautifully written and it comes together so perfectly. Though that will stick with me for a long time, and the final scene of this is one of the most poignant and beautiful that I have read in a long time. We also have revolution, and war and how that affects, pardon me, and how that affects India and some of these family members. And it definitely creates a strain with some of these characters. However, this family and where it is located is almost kind of on the on the edge of what's occurring, and they're rural enough that it almost seems like what's happening is kind of distant and it doesn't really get to where they live. So some of the major themes that run throughout this book are family and how we can build our own families, even with people that aren't necessarily blood relatives. Faith and belief and hope in the face of such tragedy and adversity, things of that nature. And then with Dr. Verghese being a medical professional himself, there's a lot of attention to detail paid in regards to the medical profession, surgeons, surgery, the fragility of the human body, as well as its capacity to heal itself, and how surgeons can aid with that, both physically and spiritually, mentally. So there's a lot going on here. This book runs the gamut from some of the most happy memories to some of the most devastating tragedies. And Dr. Verghese does a fantastic job of fleshing out these characters and their family dynamic. When something happens to somebody in the family or whatever character, like, it devastates you as it would devastate you if this was happening to somebody in your own family or somebody that you knew. And then you have like the character of Big Amachi, who, no matter what occurs, she is the rock of this family and is always able to pull these characters through these situations and to be the light and the beacon for them. One of the things that kind of surprised me about this was how much leprosy plays into the storylines, and especially when it comes to Digby's side of the story. So there's something that occurs that kind of changes his plans concerning like being the surgeon that he was meant to be. And so because of this situation, he has to kind of pull an audible and go and try something else. And it's going to serve in this leper colony and be, run this place where lepers can come and get the care that they need, minimal as it may be, just because of what the disease is. And so, but I thought that was really interesting. Also, the format of this book. So it is split into, I believe, 9 to 11 parts. And the chapters are fairly short, so very digestible. You're not going to get into it and feel like you have to read for 2.5 hours before you get to your next checkpoint. You'll probably want to read for 2.5 hours, but you can pick this up and read little spurts at a time, and you'll feel like you're making good progress. So that was another thing that I really appreciated about this. So in the end, I found this to be a very positive reading experience, because in the face of all this adversity and all these difficulties, it's beautiful to see this family stick together and continue to love one another and work through these difficulties. All in all, I absolutely devoured The Covenant of Water. I'm so glad that I found it. I'm so glad that I went ahead and decided to snatch it from the library. And then, yeah, I absolutely had to have a copy sitting on my shelf because I will come back to it and reread it numerous times. So now that I have read The Covenant of Water, I will absolutely be jumping on Cutting for Stone, which I have seen reviews that people say that that one's even better than this, which I cannot imagine. But I am very much looking forward to reading Cutting for Stone and then having no Abraham Verghese to read past that. So we will have to find other books, which thankfully there are a lot of them. So to wrap this up for you, if you have not heard of this book, or if you have heard of this book and you're just kind of waiting around and haven't jumped on it yet, please just go ahead and pick it up and start reading it. You will be immersed almost immediately. If you have considered this book, consider no further. Just go pick it up, read it. You will not be disappointed. Anyways, thank you again for joining me for this first video. I know it's probably pretty rambly and off, but yeah, hopefully that'll get better. And yeah. So maybe the next video that I do will be like my top 10 favorite books or something like that. And I promise you, yeah, this one will not be on there. So don't worry about that.